Oh my gosh, I just realized something. I had done a little bit of extra research to try to find out what is going on with artists that are starting to implement AI into their work. And now I just heard about this court case that, um, yeah, the German government had it's a music royalties, just like SOCAN is in Canada or ASCAP in the US or BMI in the US. So this German, and it affects me too. Sorry to us so much. I don't mean to. So this German, they took Suno, which is $1 billion company now. I didn't realize that. They took them to court and won because they allegedly claim that Suno had went into YouTube videos and collected the data of the YouTube videos. And we're using that as a basis of song creation. I don't know how exactly that works. There's things called stems. And so essentially that music apparently was ripped off. So I didn't join Suno. I was very suspicious about it. And it also says in the fine print that they own the copyright. So, but unless you pay, then I think the AI takes a share and you get a share. It's very complex and it's very small print. And I was advising a friend who was getting into songwriting. He said, "Oh, he suggested me join Suno," and I said, "You better read up on the fine print of their terms and conditions and the sort of thing before you jump on board." And so it ended up he did a version of something that he wrote. It was a beautiful ballad, and he did it for personal reasons. He didn't do it for commercial reasons. He just wanted to have a song for his mom. And it ended up, well, he unfortunately, very sadly, he was a close friend of mine. He had passed away. But I was telling him, I said, Suno's going to own the copyright unless you pay X amount of dollars so you can get your share of any revenue that comes from that song. So that's how tricky it can really get. So there are a lot of musicians out there and people that own AI that have invested into it over the years. And then they also are partners in big end music companies. So you can see where I'm getting at with this. So I can't name names. It could be like Universal Music took over Udio. Udio sold their libraries because Universal had threatened them. So all the independent artists, some of them, a lot of them left because the thing is that Universal would have all the rights to your music if you use the platform. So I was just, no way, I'm not using that platform. So I ended up sticking to my guns, so to speak, and still producing music in studio with musicians and this sort of thing. But then I decided to experiment and I wanted to get into electronic music. And so it gets really tricky. So if you start using AI, then the AI aspect of it, AI is going to own part of what you created, even if it's your intellectual property. So it gets very sticky. And so now I would suggest to anybody who's in music or an authentic music creator to try to not use AI if they don't feel that is going to benefit them at all until all this kind of thing is a little bit more clear cut. because it seems like, okay, we know a lot of major label artists are invested into AI, and so they're under those big publishing companies. So I took some notes here so I could understand all this, and then I got distracted. But yeah, those big name artists, like just on the streaming, like this is how it's almost like that pyramid system. Well, these are big superstars, so as soon as they have a release, um, 85 billion Taylor Swift, like to 328 million, and Drake 304 million, 230 million, Ed Sheeran 48 billion, 193 million, so by stream. So it's whatever that artist is signed with, whatever record company, um yeah, they like they get a cut, so maybe they'll get 2 or 3 million depending on what's in their contract. Could be 5 or 15 million, who knows. You're looking into a billion. It's $1 billion industry. It's not $1 million industry. So the guy that founded Suno, he's worth over $1 billion. So, and Spotify, Spotify was to be a platform for artists, and yet artists get paid pennies, and they get a pool of the revenue stream or whatever that comes in. But the thing is they are, like the CEO is worth over $1 billion. So that's kind of telling you something right there. So yeah, I think, like, I wrote this down: rock and roll will never die, but today is replaced by AI. That's kind of how it's going. So yeah, the technical aspect is really sticky. So earlier, so my video that I created, there's like a segment of it that is AI. So the AI of who owns the company will get a big portion of any revenue is generated from that video, and I will get like a small credit, and I will get a little bit from it. But there was no way. I was unable to budget a video. Like, I used to do storyboards and set my music to storyboards, or I'd use public domain footage from 1920 or something. And I could put together at least a good presentation of my music. But really, when it comes down to, and my art too, I've done things like that, but anything commercial, oh my gosh. So I'm glad I tested this and experimented with this. I paid again for another membership to be able to access these things, to test them out. So yeah, if I had it my way, but the minimal, like the cheapest, crappiest video that you could possibly make at a studio is gonna run you a minimum, maybe $1,000 to $2,000 for the lowest of the dirtiest, lowest budget that you could possibly make something. So when you're at that point, it's like, well, if you're a local musician and you're wanting to get gigs and you need to have a video, then it's good to do that. And you can stick some live things that can be done with a cell phone camera. But essentially, to do a professional job is going to cost you a lot of money. So I think a lot of artists are starting to play with AI. I noticed, what's the guy? Yeah, Justin Hayward of the Moody Blues had a song, and he used AI to do the storyboards of video, because putting out a video can cost a fortune. It's like, why do you want to spend a fortune? So, and then it gets into the complications of who owns the copyright for it. And if you've used any AI, like just even a smidgen of AI as part of the presentation, well, there's a cut that has to go back to the company that is AI and who owns that company. So they basically, the people who do the coding for AI, if it's a music company that owns the AI. And then I noticed something really interesting, that there are people that have, when I don't know who they are or anything like that, but they've made millions of dollars by putting out AI content, music videos, and this sort of thing. So now Spotify is flagging content creators that have AI artists, and I think that's a good thing to distinguish them. So my music is not AI generated. My music is written by me, and then it's played through the musician or the engineer or the studio. It all depends on the collaboration and what is involved in doing that. So it all depends on where you're at. And, electronic music, people have access to studios and they just use whatever instruments or mixing or whatever is available to them in that said studio. I worked in a studio, two studios that had the most expensive mics on the market that you could ever get. They're like a minimum $4,000 just for the microphone. And I wanted to see if my vocals sounded any better by using these studios. And it's debatable. It's hard to say because I've used really high-end studios and really underground, like the worst of the worst kind of thing, because I just wanted to get the composition out there. And I thought, well, I can, at one point, even though it doesn't seem as professional, I'm making a point. If I'm doing something live off the floor, recording in a living room at somebody's place, and the equipment is kind of old or questionable, sometimes that's a vintage sound, and that can be accomplished too. It all depends on what you want to put out as an artist, and some things are not commercial projects. So really, I am suggesting, because I was so excited about putting my video out there, I suggest that if you are an artist or you're an independent artist, do not use any AI if you can avoid it completely whatsoever, because it's the legalities and what's going on, like, it's so turbulent right now that you have to be very careful of what you're doing and what you're getting into. So the thing is yeah, like I was saying, I'm definitely not in the league. I'm independent, so I don't make nearly as much as any revenue. It is a business, but there's no way that I would even, make as much. You never know what can happen. But that whole industry is like the movie industry, it's closed. There are a certain number of people that are contracted, and once they're contracted, it's like it's an entire production to fulfill that contract, and the projected thing. So it's all like the movie industry, it's closed. And so the independents that are out there, and yeah, I agree, the music business is oversaturated with AI people just being able to release whatever they want to, and they have no music talent. They haven't paid their dues, you know, none of it. And this is an accountant or somebody that has no background in music, but thinks that they've got a hit song, or they've got this great song that the world needs to hear. But there's a cajillion artists that are out there, that and people, everyday people, just wanting to make songs for different reasons, and there isn't anything wrong with that. But I feel that, yeah, AI is a form of transhumanism, and I think it's not beneficial to humanity. So if you are a musician that's fortunate enough, you have a home studio, and you put out a few songs and you're comfortable, you're living comfortable, don't push AI onto any of your artists or to people, because it is so turbulent at this time. It's very sticky. And also, too, a lot of artists think, oh, well, you know, I've signed up to this company and I'm going to put my music into it. And they don't even realize that they don't own any of it, or the intellectual property, that it's coming from them, it's their work. It could be their music in part. They created it using that platform, but it's not, it may or may not necessarily be there. So it's a very, industry is always, I know, it's like some artists, they really screw over, and it's like a sucker's game. And other artists, they make really well. They do really well at their business. And yeah, I watched that American Wax movie just for fun, because Payola has been going on since the beginning of music. Even in that's what American Wax was. It's like there's always bribes, there's always payoffs, and this sort of thing, and that's how that industry came about. Is because in the United States, because of the civil rights and that sort of thing. And a lot of these small labels, like Motown, is a perfect example that they were really poor and worked out of house. And eventually, they turned that and they got on and they become, a movement and very wealthy. So when you even go back in the history of music, that there's always been some form of payola involved. So it's not a cut and dry business where there's honesty involved or there's any sort of democratic process, so to speak. So yeah, it's like be prepared to pay and pay and pay and pay and pay and pay and pay your dues. And then eventually, if you're very fortunate, it's like a lottery. It's like you're winning the draw, and some people win and a lot of people pushed aside, or they get into doing different things, because sometimes it's like you can hold on to an opportunity so long and it can turn into a different opportunity. And I think it's a good thing for artists to be resilient, to be able to try things out. And if they fail, if they, like, I know of some artists that have risked their entire mortgages to be able to put out a music project, and the music project flops and they're screwed. Like they're ending up living in an apartment because they mortgaged their house in order to finance their music, and that's not a wise thing. But a lot of people, they get so encapsulated into the dream of success, and they risk everything, and they end up screwing their lives over. So everybody has a different destination and different goals as to what they want to do music wise. So myself, I'm an artist, and I had a good run for many years. I've worked with a multitude of people and involved in a lot of projects. So I consider myself fortunate, but I didn't get discovered enough where I would become really wealthy or anything like that. So I was okay. I just wanted to kind of just keep doing my thing, and I still am at this point in my life. And I consider myself very blessed and very lucky that way. Because when you think of the big picture overall, you go in the U.S., it's massive. It's just unreal, and you go in these theaters, like we have theaters here up in Canada, and we do have a music industry, but it's like I don't know, it's so, it's beyond belief sometimes how huge that industry is. So when you get into international and all that sort of thing, then wow. So Yeah, that's a lot. So really, yeah, the whole AI thing, it's some people say, well, if you don't jump on board, you're going to miss out. But then there's the legalities of it. How much is the AI and the owner of the code of AI going to get? Because those people invested into those AI companies. They could be millionaires, they could be billionaires. So, they want, I don't know, they're not going to go into the trillions, but because the thing is I think music is oversaturated the way it is. And I, as a human being, can only come out with so many music projects. And like, I've been doing singles for years. I think I have one or two albums that I actually done in my entire life and my career, because it's very expensive to produce music. And even though with all the tools we have today, it seems a little bit more cost friendly, but how much music can you actually consume? And some of these AI producers, they're putting out like hundreds of tracks per week. Who's gonna buy into that or listen to that? And some there is an audience. There are people, they wouldn't have like a million to a billion listens on there unless that's fixed or rigged. I don't really know. I have no idea. But really, when it comes down to it, yeah, just use a lot of skepticism and a lot of caution. If you are an independent artist and you're using AI or you're just experimenting with it, try to avoid it as much as possible. And if you feel that for whatever reason, like whether it's a photo enhancement, or it's like whatever you're using it for, if it could be to test out a video, a cost effective video, but you want to do a professional job, just realize that AI company is, you get any revenue share from that video being broadcast, then that AI company that you contracted with, they're going to get a big chunk of that. And if you go in with that understanding and knowing that, then it's okay. But if you're independent and your bread and butter comes from your creative work, then don't do AI whatsoever. Just leave it alone. Don't touch it. If you have the tools and access to the tools where you don't even need to use AI, don't touch it, because the whole parameters of it is creepy. I think it's kind of like a reptilian. I'm kidding, but the energy of the technology is not very good. And when we did analog, and I did off the floor projects in a lot of independent studios, those tracks were warm tracks. You'd hear the vocals and the richness of them, and the richness of the instruments. It was more human, and it was way more beautiful. And when the whole digital scene took over, it just became a lot colder, and it wasn't as nice. And that's why so many people go back into music, and they don't want to listen to the new stuff. They listen to the old stuff, not because it makes them emotionally feel good about their youth or they have an emotional connection with it. It's also because of the quality of the music. It is a lot warmer, and it's a lot more human, and it's a lot better in a lot of people's opinions. So I just really wanted to express that today. I'm not apologizing for being able to test something out and then getting it to the level that I want to get at. Yeah, so I just like, I want to still be able to create some videos. I still want to piece together maybe collage projects and put more art into my work and just do music to kind of back that, like I always have been doing. So I'm sort of on the fence and undecided about it all, because the more I learn about it, it's like, woo, this is way too much. And yeah, there's only so much as an artist that I really want to get into this stuff, because I got to the point when I was ill I couldn't even listen to music at all. I just listen to sounds of the ocean, and that's fine too. So, yeah, I think sometimes we just like the whole market's so oversaturated. It's unbelievable. It's like people, well, yeah, there is music for porn. I think that's funny, but that's the same thing. Like the porn industry is so oversaturated. There's so much pornography on the internet. It's unbelievable, and I think sometimes that could turn some people off a little bit. So, and it's the same with music too. If you get into, like, some people just love music so much, it's such a big part of their lives, like it is mine. But also too, you can make yourself sick from too much of anything. So yeah, I just say, like, if you can avoid using AI at all, don't use it. And if you want to experiment with it or try it out, know that somebody owns that. It's usually a big company or it's heavily invested, depending, because there's so many AI companies now, that they are going to take a big chunk of what you're doing regardless. So you have to protect yourself. The more you make, the more you get known, the more you've got to protect yourself. So just be very careful staying in this industry. And, you know, there are a lot of musicians that are pure musicians and they would never dream of touching AI. There's just no way. So it's like, you're a creator, you just have to make really wise choices for yourself. I felt the need to have to do this because I don't want to slip into that genre if I've used AI just for mixing and just for mastering, and I haven't used it for anything else, or if I've used it for a storyboard, then fine. But the thing is like I said before, I'm on the fence. I'm very skeptical about it. I'm an independent. I'm just a small little speck in the universe. I am a small potatoes thing, and that's kind of how I've operated for a really long time, but I'm a creative person. So, anyway, yeah, as an artist, I do understand the business, but the business is so effing corrupt. It's unbelievable. And a lot of artists end up being uh, put to the wayside. They're intentionally they're put here. It's almost like oppression. While others, the more money that's invested, then they go up and they have a certain status. So yeah, and this is really long. I've really talked, but I needed to get this out because I feel really uncomfortable about, like, changes with just in the past week has been phenomenal. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I hope you have a good one, and that's it. Good night.